Hi, my name's Phil. I'd like to talk about, well, in this case, not politics, but channel changes. So this video is essentially for regular viewers. There's not very much political commentary here, wise or otherwise. It's essentially about the channel. So I've recently been making changes to the thumbnail design. Some of you have noticed. And I'm going to continue with this until I'm happy. Expect further experimentation. Some are not happy about the AI elements. I'm going to cover that at the end of the video. I'm afraid it's going to be quite a long one. Because first, the more practical reasons for a change at all, with or without AI art. So over the years, I've made several changes to certain aspects of how I run the channel and present the content. The biggest, I suppose, was going full time. But there have been others as well. Not all have been well received by some, but all have made the channel more successful, or at least reversed a decline. Because there have been declines, which I'm not sure how many people have noticed at various times, because I pay attention to the data, and so I act quickly, rather than waiting for the proverbial to hit the fan and panic. The nature of a political channel is that changing politics is both a threat and an opportunity. But also the nature of YouTube itself, like with many things in life, means that to remain competitive, you cannot afford to coast. You can't afford to think, oh, I've cracked it now, this is fine. I've seen YouTubers riding high and then not even be able to afford basic bills the next month because they failed to plan ahead. They didn't see the warning signs, then their channel crashed and it was like, that's it. They just rode the wave and crashed on the beach in a crumpled heap. Now, I've seen some of them get back on their feet after a lot of painful readjustments. Some disappeared completely. So I prefer my readjustments to be thought through and done before they become absolutely essential. And when it comes to YouTube, there are 5 important things to always be reviewing, which I'm not going to bore you with here, just to say that one of them is the thumbnail. The thumbnail is one of the most important features of the channel, not just my channel, any channel, and it's absolutely the single factor which most YouTubers neglect. With the right thumbnail, more people will click on your videos. Last month, YouTube displayed my video 33 million times on people's feeds. I do not get anywhere near 33 million views a month. My goodness, that'd be marvellous. Most people see the thumbnail, but they don't click on it. Now, that's perfectly normal, by the way. You can't expect even a quarter to click on it. That'd be mad. But it's still important to keep reviewing the thumbnail to try and boost what's called the click-through rate, which is the rate at which people see it and go, oh, I'll watch that. And most channels, even successful ones, have some bad practice evident. In fact, for every bit of bad practice an expert will warn you about, there will be really successful channels that display it. There are some channels that are really good and they get really good views. They don't even have thumbnails. But that doesn't stop it being bad practice. It just means that that channel has way more good practice than bad. You know, it's successful in spite of the bad practice, not because of it. But it would still do better with less bad practice. So as I was building up the channel, I changed my approach to the thumbnail a few times. More regularly early on, of course. It was easier to experiment when you're still growing, and of course more necessary to experiment when you're still growing. The modern design, as it sort of has been until recently, started to take shape in August 2019, when I was still doing things alongside a full-time job in teaching, but I also knew I was going to be going full-time YouTube. This lasted for a few months. Then I tweaked it in November of the same year. And then it lasted for a very long time indeed. I pretty much didn't touch it at all until January 2023. And that was just a small tweak. It still remained recognisably the same style. And there's an advantage in having a style which regular viewers recognise in the massive thumbnails that YouTube is showing them. But you ideally need a thumbnail which does 2 things. First, one that is recognisable to the people who already know they want to watch your video. For that, I think the design is as important or more important than the title or the image. But second, you also want to attract new viewers. The design means nothing to them. What they want to know is, do I want to watch this video? Now, some of you will know, I'm very much about the data. I really delve into the analytics. I have spreadsheets of my analysis of my channel data, which I update every day and evaluate fairly regularly. And one thing that has stood out over the last year or so is that although I have a lot of returning viewers, I'm not getting as many new viewers. So for reasons I've already gone over, ignoring a sign of stagnation is not really very wise. And what is it that brings in new viewers? The thumbnail. This is all a new viewer sees if they don't click on it. That's all they will ever see of the channel. So the data suggested that the thumbnail was basically no longer strong enough. So what was wrong? Well, in some of the thumbnails, the title's too wordy. Was that the main problem? Well, I did a little analysis of view. I got a load of videos that had titles that were frankly far too wordy, and a load of ones where it was really clean. You could see it even on a smartphone dead easily. And there wasn't really much correlation. You know, the titles that were too wordy seemed to do about as well as the ones that weren't. Nothing really to separate them. That being said, if a title is so wordy that you cannot actually read it in the usual display formats, that is still bad. That still needs to stop. And that's absolutely the case with some of my thumbnails. But what I did notice when I'm browsing these, particularly on a smartphone or a tablet, and many of the videos added nothing. Far too many of them were just some picture of like a politician, probably Rishi Sunak. Every now and then I was able to use something more distinctive, which supported the title, but not regularly enough. Now at this point, I may as well have just had a title and no image at all. In fact, when I looked through some thumbnails, I wasn't even sure what the image was myself, and I chose them. And this was the case for far more thumbnails than I'd like to admit. So I realized that the problem was that I don't really have that much agency over the image. All I can basically do is do a Google image search, find something relevant, try a few different search terms, try and find something that fits, that supports the title of the video, maybe a composite with some politicians over the top of something relevant. But when you're looking at the thumbnail on a display, even on a computer, quite frankly, but certainly on a smartphone as a new viewer, the images were large, not exclusively, but largely not supporting it. They were just like, they might as well have not been there. They were just taking up space. So then I thought to myself, what I ideally want is to be able to imagine a suitable image that's really distinctive and really stands out. And instead of hoping I can find a photo that does that, produce it myself. AI art. I'd be able to tailor it to my needs. In reality, it's only half true that this is the case because the AI generators are not half as clever as they claim to be. Either that or I don't know how to chunk my requests so that they understand them. But I've done that for about a week, as you'll have noticed, where I got something that was definitely distinctive enough to stand out when viewing the thumbnails in a format that new viewers would see them. So whereas the vast majority of the older thumbnails were indistinct in terms of the images, the opposite was true with the new ones. But that doesn't mean problem solved. Just because the images are now more distinctive doesn't mean they solve the problem of getting more people to click on them. In reality, I don't know how much it helped. My click-through rate has basically remained the same. Interestingly, I discussed this with my YouTube advisor. I had a meeting already pre-arranged because I get an advisor from YouTube this year. That's nice. And they pointed out that the AI images were definitely more distinctive. They stood out more. They were better, but not all conveying what the video was about. So it's still not supporting the video, which is the conclusion I'd also started to come to. She did like the design I'd used today, which I'd already put out before the meeting. And that is because it did solve some of these issues. Now, it may be also that 1 week's not really a large enough sample, especially as it's also coincided with the Easter recess, meaning maybe there's not as many new viewers out there interested in looking up political news from sources they're not used to. Now, as I say, today you'll notice I've tried another design. For those who don't like the AI, sorry, you're still not happy. Although if this works, maybe that could eventually be replaced by human-generated art, as if anyone would tell the difference. So now I'll be trying this out for a week, maybe longer if it works. I think I'm going to be tweaking though. This one made me more nervous because what I've done is now smashed my recognizability. I do have some other designs in mind which do the same thing, but I'll also be a little nervous about trying those out as well. For example, along with an image of a relevant politician, do I add an image of myself as well? You know, do I use that as the feature of recognizability going forwards? Don't know, may try it, maybe after a haircut. However, the time to try new things out is definitely times when you expect quieter times, like parliamentary recesses, for example. And the two main periods are basically from spring to the local elections. That's usually a good one. And then early to midsummer is also another quietish time politically. But I have to say, I also wanted to try to retain my traditional design. I did get very attached to it. I did like it, hence the custom images. There's no other way. I didn't see any other way of making the thumbnails work better with that old design, because the photos and composites of photos weren't doing it. But it may also be I just need to abandon the old design as fundamentally flawed. It may be that we'll never see it again, even though I did become very attached to it. In fact, the design I've used today and will use for the next week at least had a lot of minor tweaks. I'm still not entirely happy. It may see more tweaks, but I'll give it a try. And if I settle on something that works, of course, that design will eventually become the new recognizable format. It's just in the meantime, there won't be one until, of course, the next time I think it needs improving. But what I can't do is go back to how I used to design the thumbnails, because any of the newer attempts may not work, but the older one definitely doesn't work. So another advantage of the one I've used today, for example, is I mentioned about the titles being too wordy. This new design, one of the things that appeals to me is it forces me to use shorter titles. It limits the length of the title I can use. The previous design lets me be too weird. I could just condense the words down and then you couldn't see them. You know, and that's never a good thing for titles. It's fine for scientific papers. Oh my goodness, they're wordy. Not so much YouTube videos. So that hopefully explains why you will notice some changes of thumbnail. And once I'm done with that, there's also other things I'm going to be changing on the channel as well, but one thing at a time. I may give you advance warning of the other ones. But to finish off, so some people have expressed concerns not about changing the design, although I have had some concerns about that, but you know, sometimes you have to. But specifically about the use of AI. So I'm going to go over those quickly. First objection, AI learns by scanning tens of thousands of human artworks without their permission. Yes, indeed. As do human artists. There is not a human artist alive today who did not learn their craft by not only studying, but copying other artworks without the permission of the original artist. Now, they obviously didn't pass off this as their own work. It's just practice. But the same is true of AI art generators. So the argument doesn't really hold water. Second objection is it takes work away from human artists. Now, that's a more sensible objection if true, but in my case, it's not. If a business was using human artists and then it suddenly said, okay, we're not going to use you anymore, we're going to use this AI art generator. Okay, there's an argument, but that is not the case here. I have used and continue to use a human artist for work, which I use regularly because that makes sense. Mostly I'd done that for my previous channel, but there's going to be there is some artwork on this channel from that artist, and there will be some further artwork coming to the channel from this person who lives in Canada, who I've known for some years. That doesn't change, but it's not physically or economically possible to use a human artist for my thumbnails. I need unique art at least twice a day and at very, very short notice. Not physically possible for a human to do that. And if it were, it's not financially possible for me to pay them given what a single video makes. In fact, this idea of taking money away from human work is actually a bit backwards, because the photos that I have used that people seem to think were fine and continue to use in my actual videos were taken by a human photographer. I've not paid them a penny. I don't have their permission. I don't need it. It's legal, fair use, but I'm not paying anyone. Yes, if sometimes people go to the effort to say, no, this is copyrighted to me, you can't use this image. Okay, I respect that. I don't use those images. But I'm not paying a penny for the photos I do use. But I am paying for the AI generator. So I'm actually sustaining some jobs with the AI generator, not without it. And the AI generator I'm using, by the way, I absolutely guarantee has not been used by any studios or other businesses who have been using human artists and now are using AI. No, it's not good enough. It's pants, quite frankly. To produce the sort of art that a business can viably pay a human to do, they would expect better than this can produce. So it cannot even be said that I'm supporting a project which others are using to reduce job opportunities for human artists. And once again, you know, I say I am paying to use AI. I was not paying to use my old style thumbnails. If the AI ends up not doing the trick and I stop using it, I will stop paying and I'm not supporting any jobs again. So it's one thing for people to say, you know, I don't like the AI because it looks naff. A few people have said that. Yeah, that's actually a more credible argument. It's bizarre to have people say they have a moral objection because I'm actually supporting jobs by using it, and that support disappears if I stop, which I may do. Finally, one last thing. I said there'd be no political commentary here, but I will give one little parallel. So I'm reminded of President Roosevelt back in the days when the US weren't scared of taxing the rich. He was warned, Mr. President, if you do this, all the wealthy will flee the country, you see, because they didn't like his tax plans to tax the rich. Just as people are claiming of Labour in the UK now. And Roosevelt said, oh, I know some of these people. Do you know what? I will miss them. Because you can't stick to a bad decision just because a small number of people don't like it. It's also one of the sentiments I've echoed with Labour in general. There are people on the left, just as you've got people on the right, who insist on a very narrow political direction that's way out of kilter with what most people want. They refuse to join with you if you won't stick to their line to the nth degree on everything. It's a shame, of course, that they don't want to be involved in making life better for others, but you can't do anything for these people. It's impossible to get the public consensus needed for real reform in this country if you are trying to appease a narrow section of the population who will only support you if you do 100% perfectly in their eyes. The same applies with the thumbnails. Now, some have expressed objections. They've been noted. I absolutely love comments about the stuff I do because it gets me thinking about how I can do things better. But I have to be persuaded by the argument, not the weight of replies. I've had similar objections to changes in the past and they've all worked out. If they hadn't, I'd have stopped them. It's genuinely upsetting that some people don't like a change. Because I would like to please everyone. But I have to, if I have to upset 100 people to improve my views by 100,000, well, guess which I'll choose. The channel has two symbiotic purposes after all. First, the most important, get important messages out to people. So anything I do which gets more people to watch means I'm getting those messages out to more people. And the symbiotic parallel is that being successful allows me to do it full time, which of course allows me to dig deeper and make sure that those messages are, stronger. And despite what some people may tell you, do you know what? Being a YouTuber is not a bad life. As long as you get your work done, doesn't matter when you do it, get up when you like, no managers changing their mind about something you've already started working on, no tedious meetings except for the ones you choose to attend. I do attend some. No crappy team building exercises where they make you make a chair out of a balloon. But to live that life, you have to be on the ball and be willing to change course if you see a sign saying road closed ahead. So when people say they don't like the AI, okay, say it by all means, I do like the feedback, but it doesn't give me useful information. If people say why they don't like it, that's more useful because then I can decide whether I agree with the thinking. But I will still be driven by the need to improve aspects of the channel that are failing. But those who say things like, okay, I'm unsubscribing now, I'm afraid I'm going to have to go President Roosevelt and go, I'll miss you. But a channel that tries to walk that fine line of trying to appease people with such narrow requirements, they're going to lose those viewers anyway. If it's not for this, it's something else. But do please keep the comments coming on this and other aspects of the channel. They do factor into my thinking. Thanks for watching if you've made it this far. It's a long one, I'm sorry. Until next time, I'll see you later.